going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our webinar for improving your executive functioning. My name is Emily Lebu. I am a family and community engagement liaison. We're also known as FACE. And our mission at FACE is to partner with students, families, and staff to support students' specialized academic, social, and emotional needs to promote self-determination, equitable opportunities, and authentic inclusion. So we look forward to having you guys here today. If you guys need more information about FACE, you can go to our website, ssd.org/FACE. All right, this is a webinar. It is going to be recorded. Your camera and microphone have been disabled. You are welcome to ask questions using the question and answer button, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. Chatting between participants has been disabled. The webinar cannot guarantee a confidential environment, so please do not share identifiable specific information about your family or your student. If you require additional assistance, please use the chat and I will do what I can to help you with that. Closed captioning is active and a recording of this webinar will be uploaded within 1 week of today so that you can review it or share it with your friends. So without much further ado, I would like to introduce you to Cyndy and Austin Vincent, who are going to take it over from here.
Thank you, Emily.
Thanks, Emily. So welcome, everybody. I'm Cyndy Vincent.
And I'm Austin Vincent, Cyndy's son, and we really appreciate all of you who are here for joining us today to talk about strategies to improve students' executive functioning for parents, for you.
And also for any students who are with us too, because I think that can be helpful to everyone who listens to what we have to say.
Yeah, and we often I found in teaching a lot of this and learning it myself, because I'm not a speech language pathologist like my mom, that you'll walk away often with ideas for yourself after you learn more about executive functioning. Like, I can apply that to my own life. So you will learn in teaching your children yourself. And so it's a win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. As you teach, so you learn. That is one of the keys of teaching. And even though I do not have a diagnosis of ADD or ADHD, everyone has some executive functioning strengths and weaknesses. So it's really helpful to know what those are so that you can improve them, because there's always room for improvement. So if you are attending this session, you are a ninja parent. And I think that parenting a child who has executive functioning, or we're going to refer to those as EF, because we don't want to have to keep saying executive functioning. It's a lot to say. Challenges. It requires so much patience and flexibility, and also the willingness to try new techniques. So many times, if a child has ADD, ADHD, or executive functioning challenges, the apple doesn't always fall too far from the tree. So you as a parent may end up having to help your child with skills that you find challenging yourself.
Kind of like having math homework to do and you're not a math person yourself.
So regardless of whether these are challenging areas for you or not, as you implement these strategies, as we kind of mentioned before, for your child, you might discover that where you are on the EF continuum, and it really is a continuum. So you can end up improving your own skills in lots of different areas. And I have continued to do that as I have taught and worked with students who have these challenges.
Yeah, even though you don't have ADHD, executive functioning skills apply to all of us, regardless of whether we're neurodivergent or neurotypical.
All aspects of life.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been teaching EF skills for lots of years, and I've really helped students. I work for Special School District, and I work at Lindbergh High School. And my main job in the daytime is helping students improve their social communication abilities and setting them up for life success. But I also work privately and with them as well in the area of these executive functioning skills and helping them attain these in a more effective way. My son Austin has had the journey in these same areas because he has a diagnosis of autism and other areas that he can talk about. So because of these experiences, kind of empowering people who have challenges in these areas, both one-on-one and in small groups, we decided to bring our knowledge to a wider audience. And we have a YouTube channel, which is called Electric Interactions. And our website is called electricinteractions.com.
Yeah, we'll give you a preview of that at the end of this presentation. So my mom mentioned, she's a speech language pathologist. And while I may not have those credentials per se, that formal teaching background, I'm relevant to this conversation because my life has been heavily influenced by EF theory in practice. So as my mom mentioned, despite dealing with autism and ADHD and anxiety and depression and a laundry list of other dysfunctions that I've had to overcome, I've managed to still build a successful career as an electronics engineer in the aerospace industry. And I've been able to lead and mentor individuals and teams of engineers on highly complex but successful product launches. So we hope that together, my mom and I can illustrate for you how these EF concepts aren't just sounding good on paper, but are actually powerful in real world applications.
And I think that wherever you are in your journey with these EF challenges, whether you've kind of struggled with them for a long time, or you're just really getting started with this journey, it is a journey, and it takes time, and it gets better over time. I worked with Austin I think I found out when he was in the 4th grade that he had ADD. Didn't find out until much later that he was also on the autism spectrum.
Yeah, it was a moment like, oh, well, that explains a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. So I pulled my hair out for a number of years. I was starting to learn how to work with students who have these challenges. At the same time, I was kind of discovering where he was at. So wherever you are in your journey, just hang in there. We're going to give you some great tools and tips to make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, whether your student has autism or not. So again, after our presentation, for additional help with any skill deficits your student has in EF, communication, and much more, we do encourage you to go check out our YouTube channel. Take advantage of the free strategies that your child can put into practice to immediately start improving their lives. We're all about really practical strategies that are easy to implement. Everything takes practice to get good at, for sure, but I think one of the things that sets us apart is having that sort of pragmatic approach to practical problems that we all encounter on a daily basis. Routines, especially, that's something we're going to talk about today, and emphasize and show you just how important the stuff that a lot of us take for granted really makes up the meat of what makes someone successful versus unsuccessful. And when your child is having trouble with their grades or having trouble with their sleep, routines are often the missing component, the missing link there.
So many students who have social communication problems often have executive functioning issues. So if your child happens to have a diagnosis of autism or social pragmatic language disorder, for example, or just has trouble communicating, we're going to try to talk about how those executive functioning challenges can impact that ability to have communication. That's why kind of our website and YouTube channel are focused on those areas of communication as well as executive functioning. And then the transition piece is, how do we move effectively after we learn these skills and strategies into the next area, whether that's a job or whether that's going to college or trade school or something like that. So that all kind of fits together well, I think. So we're going to be talking about what EF skills are and why they are so crucial to your child's overall success.
And yours.
And also how you can use those specific routines and strategies to make life easier for you and less stressful for you and your child.
So EF, let's talk about what it is. EF is often referred to by psychologists as the air traffic control center of the brain. And some authors have noted that having EF problems or being diagnosed with ADHD is like having a Ferrari brain with bicycle brakes. I like to think of it myself as executive functioning skills are the skills that allow you to be an effective CEO of your own life. Because what is a CEO? Chief Executive Officer, making decisions, being organized, being strategic, being effective. Those are all the things that EF skills govern for us. And if you're a good CEO, you are organized, you're on time, you know how to prioritize, all these sort of soft skills that will make or break you in your life overall. So I think of good EF skills as being a good CEO of your own life.
And one thing that I often tell kids when they're working on their EF skills, and which is very motivating, is don't you want to be your own parent? Wouldn't you like to get your parent off your back and be your own parent so that you're telling yourself, it's time to do my homework. It's time to get my stuff done. Get your parent off your back and be your own parent. And I think that's a very motivating for lots of students.
Yeah, it is. And the good news about that is that these skills can be improved with practice through consistent repetition of these routines is what they really boil down into, and specific strategies over time. And we're going to cover some specific ones that you can immediately apply to your lives and hopefully relieve some of that annoying stress that may be going on.
So there are lots of reasons. We've kind of already started to allude to those, a multitude of diagnoses that have a negative impact on EF skills. So it's not just ADD or ADHD. So you can see that if someone is diagnosed with anxiety, depression, autism, all of these diagnoses can definitely negatively impact those executive functioning skills. And so you also don't need to have any diagnosis to have trouble with specific areas of EF. So for everyone, whether you have a diagnosis or not, really understanding what your specific EF strengths and weaknesses are is incredibly empowering. And it can really lead to those solutions. So we actually, I think at the final slide, we have some information for you on how to access a EF questionnaire that you can take and find out exactly what your student strengths and weaknesses are and what your own are. So understanding yourself as well as your child, and having your child understand and what their strengths and weaknesses are, can be the springboard to kind of acquiring those new ways of approaching tasks and improving your quality of life in all the areas. So one of the other things that I think that's important to bring up is that students most of the time are never explicitly taught these skills in school.
No.
They are just sort of figured out. They're supposed to figure it out on their own. Teachers kind of think they just sort of know them magically. But for students, and some students do have very good strengths and just kind of knowing what to do and how to be organized and that sort of thing. But many students need explicit instruction in how to implement these skills and improve them. So that's what we're really going to be focusing on too.
Mm-hmm. Specific steps is what it all boils down to. Being successful in life is not an accident. It boils down to having specific processes that you follow, and all of them can be learned. And it's funny how so many of these things that seem so basic, like being on time, some people just get it, but a lot of people need that step by step. Here's how you be on time. You estimate how long it's going to take for you to get out the door based on all the things you got to do before you leave. And just knowing those explicit steps can really make a big difference, especially for the kids who didn't just get it.
And I think we like to talk about things in terms of a strength and weakness model. So it's just as important for students to know what their strengths are as well as their weaknesses, because when they're aware of those strengths, they're able to take those strengths and use them to improve whatever their weaknesses are. So that is really important whenever we're working on the weaknesses, is to understand what strengths do you have that can help you in those areas.
Yeah, play off your strengths, and those are going to be different for everybody. So as we look at this next slide here, I can't see you all, so I want you to make a mental note as I read this, if any of these issues apply at your home. So does homework time take forever? Does your child not have their materials when they need them? Do they not know what to do? Do they have missing work or take forever to get out of the house for schools and appointments? Do they do their homework and forget to turn it in? Lose or misplace things, not just the homework, but anything important? Can't find my phone. Do they have trouble focusing on homework or work? or do the work too quickly or messily or incompletely and overlook stuff that should be obvious? Or do they choose fun activities over work? If you answered yes to any of these, this is definitely a place where executive functioning can help you. And it applies to a lot more things, but these are some of the most common pain points that we see when children they have the skill gaps or a weakness that hasn't been properly addressed. So let's kind of look at, we've covered some of those pain points. Let's look at the long-term and short-term power that strong EF skills can bring you. These goals here on this slide are what we all want for our kids. And I say that as a dad myself. The biggest incentive at first in applying these routines and strategies may be to diffuse some unpleasantness or nagging at home and help students become their own parent, or as I said, the CEO of their own life. You got to tell your kids, if you want to stop being nagged by the parents, you have to become your parent. Because what is an adult? It's the internalized parent, and it's knowing what to do at the right time in the right way. It's like, I use the analogy of baking a cake. You either don't know how to bake a cake or you do, and you have to learn the specific steps to be able to successfully bake that cake over and over. And being successful with EF is learning the recipe for how to have a good bedtime routine, how to have a good wake up routine, how to handle your homework consistently. There's recipes that can be learned and followed for everyone, regardless of who you are. And it's really that simple, but a lot of times it's not made explicit enough for the kids to get it. So let's move on to the next one.
So by looking at these problems as well as solutions, we're going to come up with ways to increase the use of routines and strategies. And this is really the bulk of our work, those routines and strategies. Mm-hmm. And here are just some examples of some routines, ways of breaking them down, work into steps, and strategies that can be built into your schedule. So we're going to cover a lot more of these, or we do cover a lot more of these on our YouTube channel. But today we're going to kind of take a deep dive into just one specific routine that's helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the homework routine is a good example because that's one of the number one problems.
You need to move that forward.
Yeah, I am. Okay. So sorry for that, technical difficulties. So as I said, we're going to cover the homework routine because that's probably one of the number one stressors for parents. It's like, oh my gosh, your grades, because that's the springboard to the next step in life, if you're going to go to college or trade school or whatever. But before we get into that example routine, here are some considerations you need to make when you choose what specific EF routine or behavior that you want to work on first at home. You can choose a behavior that'll get you some quick success, or maybe you can choose, what's causing the most amount of chaos and problems in life. That may take more time. It's up to you, whatever is most going to give you the most bang for your buck. What you want to do is work out the steps with your child, and you want to get their buy-in on the process. I can't emphasize enough, you want to approach this as a team, not as an adversarial relationship, because if you're going to get your child to become their own parent, they have to be invested in the process. They have to internalize the steps of whatever routine, and they have to believe in it. So it can't just be you making them do it. And we'll elaborate on that as we go on. But as you create and work on these systems, they will become automatic over time and make life easier for everyone. Because again, what's the difference between a successful adult and an unsuccessful adult? A successful person consistently, automatically does the things they're supposed to do as a routine. And so I'm driving this point home over and over. Routines are key to success.
And when you have routines, they take that cognitive load off of your brain. So you don't have to think, what do I need to do to get ready for bed tonight? No, we don't usually have to think that. Most of us have some sort of a bedtime routine where we just go in, take care of what needs to be done, and we're ready to go to bed. But if we had to think about it every time,
it would be exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or if we felt like, well, I was lucky enough to get to bed on time last night, but I don't know how it's going to work out tonight. It's like, you don't think that as a successful adult because you have a routine.
Exactly.
Your child isn't born knowing a routine. So we have to teach them routines, sometimes explicitly, to get them to, adopt them.
So when we're thinking about those EF skills, remember to work with your child where they are. So think about their specific skill set and their level of ability. So if they are not studying at all or doing any homework at all, then it's kind of unrealistic to think they're going to do 2 hours of homework every single night. So you want to start small, maybe 15 or 20 or 30 minutes a night, even though you're saying, well, that's not enough. And it probably isn't enough, but we've got to start somewhere. And we've got to start with a goal that seems doable to them. So a mom contacted me recently because her 9th grader was sitting on the computer or just looking at one page or another instead of studying. She was quite exasperated, and I'm not making fun of her or him. She just didn't know how to go about making improvements for this student. So that is an example of a student who needs very direct instruction on what studying looks like. So it is not going to help this student say, you're not studying, study. Okay. So they don't have any notion exactly what studying looks like, even though we think everybody should know what that looks like and how to do it. So you may need to break it down, as we've been talking about explicitly, and tell the student, now here's how we're going to approach this task. We're going to do this. We're going to sit down and do this at a time, maybe on Sunday afternoon, Saturday afternoon, when we're not in the midst of homework.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about how can we approach this routine more effectively. And this approach is called the I do, we do, you do method of teaching. And it's really very systematic. For most teachers use this approach. So you're having trouble with a homework routine, or you don't have a homework routine. So you, or a how to study. So you look over the chapter. You say, okay, come on here, Austin. Let's look over the chapter and the notes for this test. Now that's the first thing we're going to do. Maybe underline all the important things in the book. Now, the next thing we're going to do is write down all the vocabulary words that you don't know. Now, let's make some flashcards for those vocabulary words. Here's how you do that. Put the vocabulary word on one side, put the word definition on the other, turn it over, and that's how you study them. So that's the I do part. I told him exactly how to do it. So you're explicitly showing your child how to do the desired behavior. Now, the next part is the we do part. This is where you and your student do the activity together. So I say, okay, here's the cards we made up. Now let's start showing you how to study for them. And you show them all the ways of underline in the book. We can use different colors for the things we know or for the things we don't know, for the concepts that are important. So we're working together and helping them understand that part of it. As we're doing that we do part, maybe I'm helping him pretty much the first time and then gradually fading that help as he learns how to do that behavior on his own. So as part of the fading process, though, don't just show him once or twice. I gradually fade over time. But still, as he starts to take that you do part, I might still need to be a physical presence because little Austin tended to get, lost in the clouds or thinking about other things.
Got to check in.
So you have to just physically be there. So it's really important when you're doing these homework routines to be in the same physical space as your child. And that doesn't mean you have to sit right next to them, or it may mean that for your child. But you might need to have them in the kitchen. Maybe you're making supper and you've got their computer where you can see it, and making sure that they're staying on track. So that's the you do part. But you cannot go directly to the you do part without first completing the we do or I do and show them how to do it. And then the we do part steps, which are, it's a process.
Yeah, and to quickly solidify that in your mind, just remember, you wouldn't go up to someone who'd never cooked before, or like, let's say a 6-year-old, and go, bake a cake for me. They would be like, I don't know how to do that. You got to give them a recipe. You got to show them how to do it. You got to do it with them, and then you got to let them do it by themselves. That's the way that kids learn.
And so basically we're making a recipe of the steps that are involved in whether it's the homework routine or the getting ready for bed routine.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Or the leaving the house routine. So we're breaking it down, and you're going, this is going to take a lot of time. We're not going to do all the routines all at once. We're going to focus on one to start out with.
Yeah.
And then we're going to gradually fade our assistance as we go along. And it does take some time to get started. But how wonderful when your child starts doing it on their own and starts becoming independent. Then you're freed up to do your thing.
Yeah, exactly. They become an independent functioning adult.
Exactly.
So with that I do, we do, you do approach, the goal is to make the steps in each process automatic for your child, as we said. As we're able to put those tasks on autopilot and turn them into routines, it takes that load off our brain to remember the information consciously. So for an example of a small routine, when I enter my house, I immediately hang up my keys. And I call this, my key routine. If I forget to do this, as soon as I see the keys in another location or I feel them in my pocket, I go back and immediately hang them up. Homework routines, similarly, help decrease anxiety because the student has a regular plan to get stuff done and they don't have to worry about how the work will get done, and they don't have to make up the steps each time they have a new assignment. My key routine reduces anxiety because I always know where my keys are. The routines help you feel calmer and increase your confidence in yourself because you know that you can get things consistently done.
So it's amazing how many students don't really make the connection between using these strategies and routines and ascribe their school success to luck or how much the teacher likes them. They often don't make a connection between these strategies and how that relates to achieving those consistently good grades. So you might ask them, how did you make that A on your recent paper? They might go, oh, the teacher liked me. Or, I don't know, I was just lucky. That's why you have to explicitly teach your child that the steps and strategies of the routines are the foundation of their life success. And that is what, have you noticed that since you've been using that homework routine, how life has been a lot easier? Have you noticed since we have that checklist when you go out the door, like you haven't been forgetting your stuff at school? So it's important for you to be explicitly showing them, making the connection for them between the use of these routines and strategies and how it's helping them in their life.
Yeah. Have you noticed how every time I follow that recipe, I get a delicious cake? It's the same idea.
So as you and your child are establishing those routines that actually work, that decreases your stress and makes your home life so much more effective and run more smoothly. So for lots of families, routines for bedtime, getting out the door in the morning, and homework tend to create the most stress. So,
or lack of routines.
You kind of said earlier, you can either start tweaking the one that needs the least amount of work. Maybe you sort of have a bedtime routine, but it's not 100%. And your next step might be, I'm going to make up a checklist for bedtime to see if we can get that moving a little bit more smoothly. Whereas the homework routine or the getting out the door routine in the morning, those are the nightmares. So you might want to start with the easy, or you might want to start with the harder one. It's really up to you. The one that has the most disruption and gets some success going.
So as you develop that routine, like we said before, you really got to get that buy-in from your child. The more they're involved in producing the process, the more willing they'll be to participate and follow through. Once you've determined what your goal is, for example, you want to get to bed on time, or you want to get out the door in the morning quickly and without drama, then you got to create the steps of the routine, write them down, and post them somewhere easily visible. For instance, for the morning routine, you might post the steps in the child's bedroom or by the door, depending on the sequence of the steps. Encourage them to look at their list instead of prompting them what specifically to do.
Now, one thing you can do is put that list in a sleeve so that they can check it off, and then you can wipe that off and they can use it over and over.
Yeah, like a clear sleeve and a marker.
Mm-hmm. And that's very reinforcing for kids to like mark it off. Yeah, got that done.
It feels good. They can be like, I got something done.
Right.
So you want to say something, for example, like if they're forgetting, have you checked your poster? And at a relaxed time, that is not in the morning. So if you're working on your morning routine, you don't want to go over it while it's happening. You want to wait till the time is calm, sit down after the first few days or week and see how it's going. You want to determine if the child needs, so this is an important concept. We want to determine if they need an immediate reward or if they can work towards one after following the routine for 1 week. So the key idea is rewards to reinforce the good behavior. So also, if it's unreasonable for the child to do all the steps of the routine, like if it's a complex routine, or they can't do it 100% perfect the first time, then maybe you might consider a reward for reaching 50% or 75% of the steps in week 1. Perhaps for week 2, you can raise the threshold and require a greater level of steps completed if you want to get the same reward.
So let me talk about rewards for a moment, because many students who have difficulties with EF challenges do not really understand the concept of self-rewards. Very successful people reward themselves once they do a difficult task. And you may even do it somewhat unconsciously, like, okay, after I finish this part of the project, I'm going to have a cup of tea. Or when I get this part of the project done, I'm going to go for a walk. And so I think the more that we can open up our thinking and what works for us, for our kids, we call that making our metacognition, which is our metacognitive thinking. I have it in my brain that when I get done with this project, I'm going to have a cup of tea, is to say that to your student. When I get done making this meal tonight, we're going to all sit down and watch TV, because that's going to be my reward for us to make dinner and clean up. So it's really important for kids who have difficulty waiting to get rewarded at the end of the term or the end of the semester for their good grades. You have to have a little reward. And I'm not talking about spending thousands of dollars, but have a little reward, like some screen time, or read a book together. There's got to be a reward every time for a lot of kids to help them get through these. So if you get your morning routine and you're out the door, on the way to, if you're driving them to school, for example, on the way to school, we'll listen to some of your favorite music. So it doesn't have to cost you anything. It could be, or I'll listen to you tell me about, your video game, which I don't really want to hear about, but I'll listen to that and you can tell me all about it. So that can, you can be creative with your rewards. So now that we understand that the importance of routines, let's look at a routine from start to finish. And I think we're going to talk about a homework routine, but I think that you can take some of these ideas and apply them to anything in your home that you're having difficulty with. Mm-hmm. So we're going to start with that teaching technique of I do. So I'm going to show you how to do it. We do. We're going to do it together, and I'm going to help you. And then I'm going to gradually fade that help so that you're going to do that on your own. So again, you might have to be in the same room while they're learning this routine, if it's a homework routine, and they need to be successful with the steps before you fade your involvement. So you want to sit down with your child on the front end and kind of talk to them about the steps. So when do you want to do your homework routine? Where do you think would be the best time to do it? How long do you think you can work before you take a break? Using a timer for that work time and break time. And for older students, I would not work longer than an hour. Cognitive studies show that we really need that break time. If you work for as long as an hour, take a 10-minute break. If your student is more like a 10 or 15-minute kid, then 3 to 4 minutes for the break, and using a timer so that we don't have fights about going back and forth, work time, play time. The other thing I would say about that break time is don't make it a screen. So save the screen for the end of the homework routine and do something physical, like dance for 2 or 3 minutes, or go up and down stairs, or take the dog out for a quick walk, something that involves movement, but not something that's a screen, because then again, you have to get rid of the screen, and it's just.
And it derails what you're focusing on. The mental focus gets derailed, especially with how addictive things are on phones these days.
So you want to save that reward for when the routine's done. So for the homework routine, the first step should be organizing the papers and the binders and looking at that online portal, and then make a list of the assignments that are missing or coming up. And you may go, oh, it's going to take some time. It may take time the first couple of nights while that backpack is an absolute disaster. But if this is part of your homework routine every night, you'll quickly get through that within 5 or 6 minutes. This way, your child has a plan to start their homework and to move forward. And they come up with a time to start the homework routine and they stick with that time.
Yeah, that's the buy-in part. You know, you don't want to force them into doing something that they're not able to stick with.
Now with the time, some kids get home at the same time every night, but if the kid has a variable schedule, I'll say, okay, 30 minutes after you get home, whatever time that is when you'll start it.
Mhm. So to start this formal homework routine, for step one, let's go through it. Sit down with your child and work together to decide where and when the work will be done. As we just talked about, for the variable schedules, because we've heard this as an excuse before. Well, I don't get home at the same time. Okay, well, 30 minutes after you arrive home, you can start your homework. For step two on this slide, the reason that it's important to check your grade portal is that it's crucial for kids to know exactly where they stand, where their grades are, what assignments are missing, and what are coming up. For step three, using the head in the sand strategy works until it doesn't. It's not a long-term solution. And I know it can be stressful to know for kids that they have several missing assignments, but often what happens is something like we think we have 10 overdue assignments only to discover that there's really only 4. And when you actually are in reality about the problem, it usually reduces your negative emotions. So making a habit to be always up to date on what's coming and what's late is crucial to keeping that overall stress low. Now, the fourth must-have step in this routine is to estimate how long a task will take and then note the time it actually took. This technique works on a variety of critical EF skills such as time management, planning and prioritizing, organization, and even stress management. It's called estimation. That's the goal. You want to estimate how long things are going to take,
and kids are really bad at that. They a lot of times they think, oh my God, this is going to take 2 hours and it takes 15 minutes.
Yeah, and that can be a real showstopper for a lot of kids, myself included, when I was growing up, because something new, I'd be like, oh, this is going to take forever. I can't do this. And so I would avoid it. But if you practice estimating and putting finite bounds on things, it really helps you understand, oh, I can do this, even though I've never seen this before. I've never done this before. It's not going to take forever, and it's only going to take a finite amount of time, and it's often going to take less time than I think it will. So that reduces a lot of anxiety. I use that a lot, even in my professional life. So for the final step here, organization is inherently built into this routine because we're keeping the papers and the files in order and ensuring that we have our homework ready to turn in on time the next day. It's so aggravating if we did all the work and then we forgot to bring it.
And one of the things that I also suggest that parents do, I know a lot of assignments are electronic these days, but for those paper assignments, if your child is the one that loses the homework from home to school, is take a picture of the homework assignment that's completed and email it to the teacher. And then for sure it's getting there. So this is an example of a homework routine that I help a student set up. And in this routine, the mom was working close by in the kitchen, and that was enough to keep this particular student on track. So mom did help with the check-in part, that making the plan when the homework needed to be worked on, like what are we going to do first, next, and so forth. Some kids like to do the hardest homework first. Some kids like to do the easiest homework first. So then mom checked in at the end of the routine to make sure that everything was actually done. And as we talked about rewards, the student got an immediate reward at the end of her routine, which for her was 30 minutes of screen time. And here's another routine that I helped create. And at the beginning, they're checking the portal, like we talked about before, to look for any outstanding work. And they're also estimating how long they think each assignment will take. So for students with those organizational problems, that is essential that they spend a few minutes every day to get their papers and files in order, whether that's electronically. So some kids are very do not have an organizational system for their computer, which is very important to have folders for each class, folders for each on email for each class and so forth. But also this student had a homework folder that had things that they had to do on one side and then the completed work that they were going to turn in on the other. And so it's very reinforcing whether kids are checking off a list or whether they are putting that homework from the to-do side to the completed side. then it physically shows them they're making that progress. And for this student, the break was 10 minutes. And like we said, I don't think you should go longer than that if you're working for about an hour.
And again, I really want to reiterate that importance of the concept of estimating time to complete work. This is something that so many people don't do. And yet it's such an anxiety reducer for kids because, you know, as I said, I would freeze up because I thought things would take forever. And by estimating, it can just bring us back to reality and prevent us from putting our head in the sand and avoiding things. So it's like, it's not going to take forever. It actually is only going to take 15 minutes. So as you're developing homework and other routines for your child, for example, like coming home from your school routine or waking up in the morning routine or evening homework routine or going to bed at night routine and more, you are embedding key EF abilities in your child's skill set and helping them to be more effective and independent overall, which means that you do less work and your child handles more work on their own.
And they become their own parent.
And that's the goal. That's what a successful adult is, right? They can parent themselves.
So as we're finishing up, we kind of want to give you some helpful resources. I think our slideshow and this presentation is going to be posted online in the next week. You can also go to our website, electricinteractions.com, send us an email through our contact form, and we'll be happy to send that. You'll have that on our website. So we'd like to show you a little bit of our YouTube channel, I think, next, right?
Yeah, show preview. Still got some time. So here's our,
and then we want to see if there's any questions.
Yeah, so here's our website on the right side. We have classes and
whatnot. So we teach in-person classes and we do online classes as well in those areas of communication, executive functioning, and helping kids get ready to go to college or trade school.
Yeah, and here's our YouTube channel on the left. And
so please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're going to show you just 2 minutes of a YouTube.
The goal is to teach practical skills, and it's fun to watch. It's not like education. It's educational without feeling educational, if you know what I mean. Hey everyone, I'm Austin Vincent, and this is my mom, Cyndy Vincent. Welcome to Electric Interactions, where we empower your interactions with yourself and others. Today's video is here to help improve your ability to manage the hours you have each day, also known as time management.
Now, from my background as a professional speech and language pathologist, strategies for effective time management come from the set of skills and processes in the brain called executive functioning. Having good executive functioning skills is an important part of overall life success and happiness. Other executive functioning skills besides time management include task initiation, that is, the ability to get started on a project, setting and achieving goals, and mental flexibility, just to name a few.
As you can see, we're covering similar content to what we're talking about tonight. So if you're interested in learning more about executive functioning, definitely check it out.
And if your student, if you'd like your student to have some information, those are great videos to watch. Either have your student watch them or watch them with your student. So these are some resources. The ADD Forums and Attitude Online Magazine sponsors a lot of webinars. They're a great resource. So there are, and then there's the executive functioning forms that you can assess your executive functioning strengths and weaknesses as well as your students in the resource page. All right, do we have any questions or comments?
I don't see anything right now. If you guys have any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the Q&A. I am going to drop a link in the chat to all of those resources that they were talking about. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
So one thing that I didn't mention that I like to kind of throw in there occasionally is that I do work with a lot of students who have communication challenges. And a lot of times students who have those communication challenges have executive functioning issues. So you can kind of see if a child is having trouble making friends or getting started. If they're having trouble getting started on their homework, which is trouble with initiation, they might also have trouble getting started talking to somebody or making friends with somebody. So these executive functioning difficulties can impede lots of areas of life, not just homework. They can really impact you socially as well. And I think that's important. If I am not good at keeping a schedule and we make a plan to go out to a movie Friday
That's a
night
good point.
and I forget that, and you call me and go, hey, where are you? I'm like, oh, totally forgot, show up at the show. So that's going to kind of ruin our friendship, I'd say. So those executive functioning skills are really important with our social life as well.
Yeah, they really are. We have one comment just says, love the content, so many helpful tips. And I agree. This was a wonderful presentation. I really appreciate your guys' time. I appreciate everyone who took the time to join us.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you for having us.
We do have some, you can call us at 314-989-8460 or go ahead and email us face@ssdmo.org. I will be sending out a recording of this presentation. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out. We really appreciate you being here. At the end of the webinar, there will be a very brief survey, and we would love your feedback. We do use that feedback. We change our programming based on that feedback. So please take just a couple of seconds to fill that out. And again, I'd like to thank our guests tonight. I really appreciate it. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you, Emily. Thanks for having
And
us.
thank you, everybody, for attending. We hope
Yes, thank you so
you
much.
get some value out of this.
Yes, it was wonderful. Everybody have a good night.
Okay, good night now.
Thank you.